At 34 years old, Andre Gibson made a respectable living, pulling in a salary of $250,000 a year as a senior logistics manager for a national shipping conglomerate. He was good at his job, meticulously planning the movement of millions of dollars in goods across the country. He understood supply chains, inventory management, and the critical importance of a balanced ledger. He believed in systems, in order, and in the quiet integrity of a promise kept. What he did not understand, not yet, was that the same principles he applied to his work could be weaponized against him in his own home. He stood on the manicured brick sidewalk of a high-end shopping center in Ponte Vedra, Florida, feeling the humid evening air cling to his skin. The sky was a bruised purple, the sun having just dipped below the horizon. In front of him, glowing with an almost celestial warmth, was the grand opening of Vasquez and Company, a boutique so chic and exclusive it seemed to hum with the silent frequency of wealth. This was his wife's family's dream, realized. Miriam, his wife of 5 years, her father Ricardo, her mother Elena, and her brother Mateo. They were all inside, bathed in the soft, expensive light, clinking champagne flutes that probably cost more than his weekly grocery bill. Andre had put on his best suit for the occasion, a simple but well-tailored navy wool suit from Brooks Brothers that had cost him a considered $600. He felt a swell of pride for them, for Miriam. He had supported this venture, believing he was a part of it. He had, after all, helped fund it. Or so he thought. He took a step toward the gleaming glass door, ready to join the celebration, to share in the culmination of what he believed was a shared effort. But Miriam appeared at the entrance, a vision in a shimmering, emerald green dress that must have been custom-made. It was a masterpiece of silk and confidence, a dress he now realized he had paid for, though he hadn't known it at the time. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant arrangement of twists and coils, looking regal and untouchable. She blocked his path, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Behind her, he could see Ricardo, resplendent in an $8,700 Armani suit, his arm around his wife Elena, who was draped in pearls. Mateo stood nearby, smirking, wearing a watch that Andre knew for a fact was a Rolex Submariner, a $15,000 piece of celebratory hardware. "Andre," Miriam said, her voice low and smooth, but with an edge of finality he had never heard before. "I'm glad you came to see it." "It's incredible, Miri," he said, his own smile genuine. "I'm so proud of you. Of all of you." He made to step past her, but she put a perfectly manicured hand on his chest, stopping him. The gesture was gentle, but the force behind it was immovable. "Thank you for coming," she said again, as if he were any other guest. "But the family is about to do the ribbon cutting. We need to have a private moment." Andre frowned, confused. "Private? Miri, I'm your husband. I'm family." Her smile tightened, becoming a thin, sharp line. She glanced over her shoulder at her father, who gave her a slight, almost imperceptible nod. When her eyes returned to Andre's, they were cold, devoid of the warmth he had known for 5 years. "No, Andre," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that cut him more deeply than any shout could have. "This is a Vasquez family moment. You've never been family." The words hung in the air between them, stark and brutal. He felt the blood drain from his face. He looked past her, into the bright, laughing world of the boutique, a world built with his money, his trust, his labor, and he was being locked out. The humiliation was sharp and public. A few people in the gathering crowd were close enough to hear, their curious glances turning into pitying stares. He was the husband, the provider, the man who went to work every day, and he was being told he didn't belong. He was an outsider, a tool that had served its purpose. Miriam didn't wait for a response. She simply turned her back on him, the emerald green silk of her dress whispering as she disappeared back into the light, leaving him alone on the sidewalk in the gathering dark. Have you ever given your all to someone, only to find out you were just a means to an end? It's a pain that goes deeper than just money. Let me know in the comments if you've ever felt that kind of betrayal. We're going to walk through every step of how Andre took back his power, and trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Their life together, before that moment, had been a carefully constructed facade of domestic normalcy. They lived in a pleasant two-bedroom apartment on Riverside Avenue in Jacksonville, a space filled with mid-century modern furniture they'd picked out together and framed prints of abstract art. It wasn't a mansion, but it was home. The rent was $2,200 a month, a comfortable expense on Andre's salary. He drove a 2018 Honda Accord, a reliable sedan with over 80,000 miles on it, paid in full. It was a practical car for a practical man. His philosophy was simple: work hard, save diligently, and build a secure future. He contributed the maximum to his 401k and maintained a separate savings account that, until recently, had held a healthy six-figure balance, the fruit of years of bonuses and disciplined living. Miriam was different. She appreciated the finer things, a trait she inherited from her family, who always seemed to live just slightly beyond their means, chasing an image of old money prestige they didn't quite possess. Andre, in his love for her, had indulged it. He saw it as making her happy. When she'd wanted the white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 car, he'd co-signed the loan and made sure the $650 monthly payment was always covered from their joint account. He never questioned the $1,200 Gucci handbag she bought for her mother's birthday or the succession of $900 Christian Louboutin shoes that filled her side of the closet. He saw these as expenditures on their shared life, investments in her happiness. He had no idea they were just rehearsals for a much grander deception. The idea for the store had been introduced over a casual Sunday dinner 6 months ago. It was Ricardo's grand vision. Pontevedra is begging for a truly high-end retail experience, he'd announced, swirling a glass of $80 Cabernet. Not the usual department store junk. Curated fashion, Italian leather, French design, Vasquez and Company. It sounded ambitious, exciting even. Andre, ever the logistician, saw the potential pitfalls: high overhead, competitive market, but he also saw the fire in Miriam's eyes. This was her family's dream. The requests for money started 2 weeks later. It was a Tuesday evening. Andre was on his laptop finalizing a complex shipping schedule for a new client when Miriam sat beside him on their comfortable $3,000 crate and barrel sofa. She rested her head on his shoulder. "Andre, baby," she began, her voice soft and persuasive. "Papa is placing the first big inventory order. We have a chance to get an exclusive line of handbags from a small Milanese designer. But we have to pay up front." "Okay," Andre said, his focus still half on the screen. "Does he have the capital?" "Almost," she said. "We're just a little short until the initial business loan clears. We were wondering, could we lend the business a little? Just a short-term advance? Maybe $6,000? It's just until the first shipment sells. It would come right back to us in a few weeks." A loan. An advance. The words were specific. Professional. It sounded like a standard business practice. He loved Miriam, and he wanted to support her family. "Of course," he said, closing his laptop. $6,000 is fine. We can handle that." "Thank you, baby," she breathed, kissing his cheek. "You're the best. I'll just do the transfer now so Papa can lock in the order. I'll label it inventory advance so we can track it." He thought nothing more of it. He watched as she did the transfer on her phone, and later, when he glanced at their joint account, he saw it. A withdrawal for $6,000, with the memo "Inventory Advance." It looked official, temporary. He felt a small sense of pride, of partnership. He was helping build something. That Friday, his bi-weekly paycheck of just over $9,600 direct deposited, as it always did. The following week, the pattern repeated. This time it was Mateo, who supposedly needed the help. Mateo found an amazing deal on some cashmere sweaters, Miriam explained over the phone while Andre was at work. The supplier wants $5,500 by tomorrow. Can we do another little advance? Andre hesitated for a fraction of a second. Another one? Already? It's just how the fashion world works, honey, she said, her tone light and breezy. You have to move fast. It'll all be paid back in a lump sum once the store opens and the revenue starts flowing, I promise. He was in the middle of a stressful negotiation for warehouse space. He was distracted. He trusted his wife. Okay, Miri, if you think it's right. And so it went. 14 Fridays. For 3.5 months, the cycle became a quiet, unquestioned part of their financial life. A text on a Wednesday, a brief phone call on a Thursday. The French shoe order came in early. We need to put a deposit on the custom lighting fixtures. The amounts varied. $7,200 one week, $6,500 the next, sometimes as high as $8,000. Each time Miriam was ready with a plausible, urgent-sounding reason. Each time she would perform the transfer herself, meticulously labeling each one "Inventory Advance." Andre was consumed by a massive project at work, the launch of a new, fully automated distribution center in South Georgia. It was the biggest project of his career, demanding 16-hour days and his complete mental focus. The domestic finances, which Miriam had always managed with his oversight, faded into the background. He saw his paycheck land every other Friday, and he trusted that their savings were growing, minus these small, temporary loans that would soon be repaid. He envisioned a day in the near future when Ricardo would hand him a check for the full amount, a proud and grateful father-in-law thanking him for his faith. He had no idea how wrong he was. He was not a partner. He was the revenue stream. The betrayal wasn't a singular event. It was a slow, creeping conspiracy, a series of secret conversations and shared glances that accumulated over 14 weeks. While Andre worked tirelessly, believing he was building a future with his wife, the Vasquez family was celebrating his gullibility. Their family dinners, from which Andre was increasingly excluded, became strategy sessions for the systematic draining of his savings. The first of these secret gatherings took place at Ricardo and Elena's sprawling mortgage-to-the-hilt home in a gated community. They sat around a massive mahogany dining table that had cost $12,000, eating steak and drinking wine Andre's money had indirectly paid for. Is he still sending it? Ricardo asked, not even bothering to use Andre's name. He referred to his son-in-law as if he were a faceless ATM. Miriam took a delicate sip of her wine. I just transferred another $7,000 this afternoon, she said, a note of pride in her voice. He's so busy with that new warehouse project, he doesn't even have time to look at the bank statements. He just trusts me. Mateo, her slick, indolent brother, let out a low laugh. Good old Andre, the workhorse. He just keeps his head down and prints money for us. Mateo had never held a job for more than 6 months, but he had an uncanny talent for spending other people's money. He wore a $1,200 Tom Ford shirt, a gift from Miriam. It's not just for us, it's for the family, Elena, their mother, interjected. She was a woman who wrapped her avarice in a cloak of maternal concern. She wrung her hands, her rings sparkling. Miri, are you sure this is wise? What happens when he finds out? A man's pride. Miriam waved a dismissive hand, the gesture sharp and impatient. Mama, please. What's he going to do? He loves me. He'd do anything for me. And besides, she added, her voice taking on a righteous tone, the lawyers said that in Florida, anything in a joint account is marital property. It's our money. What's his is mine, and what's mine is for the family. This was a piece of advice she'd gotten from a cut-rate attorney, a distortion of the law she clung to like a holy scripture. It gave her permission. They talked for hours about the store, not about the business plan or sales projections, but about the aesthetics, the luxurious appointments that would make the Ponte Vedra elite feel at home. They spoke of the custom-built mahogany shelving, a $15,000 expense. They debated the merits of Italian marble versus Brazilian quartzite for the main cash wrap counter, a staggering $22,000 decision. Every opulent detail was discussed, planned, and ultimately funded by the man they were actively deceiving. Andre's hard-earned money wasn't just inventory advance. It was being transmuted into marble, mahogany, and a mountain of lies. A few weeks later, Andre tried to breach the wall that was slowly being built around him. He and Miriam were having a rare, quiet evening at home. He'd cooked dinner, his simple but delicious shrimp scampi. He was trying to reconnect. "Tomiri," he said, as they sat at their small dining table, "I was running some numbers. With the bonus I'm expecting from the Georgia project, we'll have enough for a serious down payment on a house by next spring." He was excited, his face open and hopeful. A real house with a yard? Maybe in San Marco. Something with some character. Miriam smiled, but it was the same placating smile she used when a salesperson was being too pushy. "That's wonderful, honey. A house would be amazing." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "But let's just focus on getting the store off the ground first. This is our future, Andre. It's the foundation for everything else. Once the business is profitable, we can buy any house we want. This store is your future, too." It was a masterful lie, dangling a shared future she had no intention of including him in. She made him feel as if his patience was an investment in their collective dream. In reality, his dream of a house with a yard was being liquidated transfer by transfer to pay for her family's vanity project. He felt a pang of disappointment but pushed it down. She was right, he thought. Support the family business first. The house can wait. He had no idea he was being asked to sacrifice his dream for a fantasy that had no room for him. The cruelty escalated with each transfer. Miriam grew bolder, more contemptuous. She started to see Andre not as her husband, but as a resource to be managed. She'd call him at work, her voice a mix of manufactured stress and affection. "Andre, darling, disaster. The lighting designer needs the deposit for the fixtures by 5 p.m. It's $9,000, can you believe it? But they are absolutely perfect. Can we, you know?" He was in a meeting with engineers and contractors, juggling a dozen critical tasks. "9,000? Miri, that's a lot." I know, she'd sigh dramatically. "But Papa says it's the centerpiece of the whole store. It's an investment. Please, baby." For me, tired, overwhelmed, and wanting to be the supportive husband, he would always relent. "Okay, Miri, go ahead." He was making a multi-million-dollar logistics center a reality, yet he was powerless against a well-timed, manipulative phone call from his own wife. The final betrayal, the 14th transfer, was the coldest of all. It was a Friday morning, the day before the grand opening. Andre was in the shower, the sound of the water masking the quiet clicks of Miriam's phone. She was sitting on the edge of their bed, and coolly transferring the last large sum from their savings. $7,500. She watched the confirmation screen flash on her phone. Balance transferred. A small, triumphant smile touched her lips. The total was now an astonishing $94,000. She had done it. She immediately opened her family's group chat, a chat Andre was not a part of. She typed a quick message. "Final draw. We're fully funded. See you all at the opening tomorrow." She hit send without a moment's hesitation. She stood up, stretched, and walked to the closet to pick out her dress for the party. The man in the shower, the man who had worked for every single dollar she had just taken, was not a factor in her celebration. He was not a partner to be thanked. He was a problem that would soon be discarded. She had made a critical mistake, however. She believed his quiet nature was a sign of weakness. She believed his trust was a symptom of ignorance. She had no idea what was coming. Saturday, the day of the grand opening, dawned bright and humid. The air was thick with the promise of afternoon rain. At 9:15 a.m., in their apartment on Riverside Avenue, Andre stood before the full-length mirror on their closet door. He was adjusting the knot of his tie, a simple silk one that matched his navy suit. He was genuinely excited. Despite the nagging feeling of being on the outside of the planning, he was proud of what the Vasquezes, what Miriam, had accomplished. He believed their success would be his success. He wanted to do something special to mark the occasion. A gift, perhaps a piece of jewelry for Miriam, something to commemorate her first day as a business owner. To do that, he needed to know what their liquid savings looked like after the series of advances. He knew the number would be lower, but he expected it to be substantial nonetheless. He pictured the loans being repaid soon, restoring their accounts to their former healthy state. He walked over to the bed, where his phone was charging. He sat on the edge, the same spot where Miriam had sat just 24 hours earlier, orchestrating the final theft. He unplugged the phone and tapped the icon for his mobile banking app. He entered his passcode, his thumb swiping in a familiar pattern. The app loaded, the green circle spinning for a moment, before the main account screen appeared. And then he saw it. The number. Checking. $4,312.54. Savings. $1,879.11. He stared at the screen, his mind refusing to process the information. It was wrong. It had to be a glitch, a server error. Just last month, he'd glanced at the savings balance, and it was well over 6 figures. He had been so focused on the Georgia project he hadn't checked it meticulously in weeks. But he knew, roughly, what should have been there. It should have been close to $100,000, even with the loans. This was pocket change. His heart began to pound, a heavy, frantic drum against his ribs. A cold dread, slick and oily, started to creep up his spine. He felt a sudden shortness of breath. He forced himself to be logical, be methodical, just like at work. Analyze the data. His thumb, which felt strangely numb, tapped on the savings account. The transaction history loaded. He scrolled down. The most recent entry was a credit, the monthly interest payment, a measly $1.12. He kept scrolling up, his eyes scanning the dates and descriptions. And then he found the first one. Friday, October the 27th. Electronic withdrawal. Minus $7,500. Memo. Inventory advance. The words seemed to leap off the screen. Inventory advance. Miriam's words. He felt a jolt, as if he'd touched a live wire. He kept scrolling. His thumb moved faster now, a frantic blur across the glass. Friday, October the 20th. Electronic withdrawal. Minus $6,800. Memo. Inventory advance. Friday, October 13th. Electronic withdrawal. Minus $7,000. Memo. Inventory advance. Friday, October 6th. Electronic withdrawal. Minus $8,200. Memo. Inventory advance. On and on it went. A horrifying, relentless cascade of withdrawals. Every Friday. Like clockwork. The dates were burned into his brain. They were the Fridays after his paycheck was deposited. The money would arrive in their account, and within hours, a piece of it would be siphoned away. He didn't stop until he reached the first one, from 3.5 months ago, Friday, July 21st. Electronic withdrawal, minus $6,000. Memo. Inventory advance. 14 withdrawals, 14 Fridays, 14 lies. His hands were trembling now, the phone shaking visibly. He swiped out of the banking app and opened the calculator. His fingers felt thick and clumsy as he began to type, adding up the numbers one by one. 6,000 plus 5,500 plus 7,200 plus 6,800 plus 5,900 plus 7,000 plus 8,200 plus 6,300 plus 5,100 plus 7,700 plus 6,400 plus 6,000 plus 6,800 plus 7,500. He hit the equals button. The result glowed on the screen. $94,000. $94,000. The air left his lungs in a silent rush. He sat on the edge of the bed, the phone slipping from his grasp and falling onto the duvet. He stared at the wall, at a framed photo of him and Miriam on their wedding day. They were smiling, so happy. It felt like a picture of two strangers. The loans, the advances. It wasn't a series of small, temporary business loans. It was a systematic, premeditated draining of their entire life savings. His savings. The money he had worked for. The long hours. The missed weekends. The stress he carried home every day. It had all been funneled, week by week, into her family's vanity project. The first clap of thunder rattled the windows, and a heavy rain began to fall, streaking the glass like tears. The sound seemed to come from inside his own head. This wasn't a partnership. It wasn't a loan. This was theft. It was a profound and devastating betrayal, executed with the cold precision of a professional demolition. In that moment, the man who believed in order and systems felt the entire structure of his life collapse into dust. The sound of the shower turning off snapped Andre out of his stupor. He heard Miriam humming, a cheerful, carefree sound that was suddenly grotesque. He had minutes, maybe seconds, before she would walk into the bedroom, radiant and expecting him to share in her joy. The first instinct was a primal surge of rage. He wanted to scream, to throw the phone against the wall, to confront her with the stark, undeniable proof of her treachery. He wanted to see her face when the lies crumbled. But then, another instinct took over. It was the logistician in him, the strategist. A chaotic, emotional confrontation would give her power. It would allow her to twist the narrative, to cry, to apologize, to manipulate. He had seen her do it before in minor arguments. She was a master of emotional deflection. No. A quiet, methodical response was required. An action built on irrefutable evidence. He would not give her the satisfaction of a fight. He would give her consequences. He picked up his phone. His hands were steady now, his mind icily clear. He went back to the banking app. With a calm, deliberate precision, he took a screenshot of every single one of the 14 transfers. He captured the date, the amount, and the damning memo. Inventory advance. 14 screenshots. 14 pieces of evidence. He composed a new email on his phone, addressed to his private personal email account, one Miriam didn't know existed. He attached the 14 images. The subject line was simple: evidence. He hit send. He then went into his sent folder and deleted the email. And then went into the trash folder and deleted it from there too. A clean break. Miriam walked into the bedroom, wrapped in a fluffy white towel, her deep brown skin glowing from the steam of the shower. "Andre, are you ready? The caterers are arriving at 4, and I want to be there to supervise. We can't be late," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. He turned to look at her, his face a carefully constructed mask of normalcy. The rage was still there, a white-hot coal in his chest, but his expression was calm. "Almost ready," he said, his voice even. "You look beautiful." The words tasted like ash in his mouth, a necessary lie in a war she had started. She beamed, oblivious. "Just wait until you see my dress. It's to die for." She disappeared into her walk-in closet, the one filled with shoes and handbags he had paid for. While she was getting dressed, Andre made a decision. He would not be going to the opening with her. He needed to act. He walked into the living room and typed a quick search into his laptop. Best financial litigation attorney, Jacksonville. The first result was a firm downtown, Riley and Associates. The bio for the lead partner, Jessica Riley, described her as a tenacious and strategic advocate for victims of financial fraud. Her picture showed a sharp, intelligent-looking black woman in her 40s. He called the number. It went to an answering service. He left a message, his voice low and urgent. "My name is Andre Gibson. I need to speak with Ms. Riley immediately. It is a time-sensitive matter of financial malfeasance." Miriam emerged from the closet. She was a vision. The emerald green dress was breathtaking, clinging to her curves, shimmering as she moved. "Well?" she asked, striking a pose. "What do you think?" "Incredible," he said, and he meant it. It was an incredible testament to her audacity. "Miri, I'm sorry, I have to run out for a bit." Her face fell. "Run out?" "Andre, the opening is in a few hours." "I know," he said, grabbing his car keys. I forgot something for the Georgia project. A crucial file. I have to go to the office and get it. I promise I'll meet you there. I won't be late for the main event." Another lie, smooth and practiced. She pouted, but the excuse was plausible. He often worked on weekends. "Fine," she said, her voice laced with annoyance. "But don't be late, Andre. This is the biggest day of my life." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he said. As he walked out the door, his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Gibson, this is Jessica Riley. I can meet you at my office in 1 hour, 100 North Laura Street, 30th floor." The drive to Ponte Vedra in her white BMW 3 Series, the $43,000 car with the $650 monthly payment he covered, was surreal. Miriam was on a high, talking nonstop about the guest list. The local news anchor who had RSVP'd, the socialites whose approval she craved. "It's all coming together, Andre. Can you feel it? Our whole lives are about to change." He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He just nodded, making non-committal sounds. "I'm happy for you, Miri, for your family." He used her own words, a subtle shift she was too self-absorbed to notice. Your family. He was already separating himself, creating the distance he would need to survive what was to come. When they arrived at the shopping center, he saw the store for the first time. Vasquez and Company. The name was rendered in elegant backlit script above a wall of sheer glass. It looked polished, permanent, and incredibly expensive. He now knew to the dollar how it had been paid for. He saw the Italian marble floors, through the window, the custom mahogany shelves lining the walls. He saw his dream of a house, of a shared future, reassembled into this monument to her family's ego. A cold, hard knot of resolve formed in his gut. He would play his part. He would smile and nod and wait. The time for quiet strategy was over. The time for decisive action had begun. The hour Andre spent in Jessica Riley's office was a masterclass in swift, calculated legal warfare. Her office was on the 30th floor of a downtown skyscraper, a corner suite with panoramic views of the St. Johns River. The space was modern and minimalist, all glass and steel, projecting an aura of cool, unassailable competence. It was exactly what Andre needed. He sat across from her at a large glass desk, his laptop open. He had already pulled up the email with the 14 screenshots. Jessica Riley was even more formidable in person. She was a tall, elegant black woman with her hair in neat, intricate locks, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than his. Her eyes were sharp and missed nothing. She listened without interruption as Andre laid out the story, his voice low and devoid of emotion. He presented the facts as he would in a business meeting: the duration, the frequency, the total amount, the inventory advance memos. He concluded by telling her about the grand opening, scheduled to begin in just a few hours. When he was finished, she leaned back in her high-backed leather chair, her expression thoughtful. Her fee, she explained, was a steep $750 per hour, with a $5,000 retainer to begin work. Andre didn't flinch. He pulled out his personal American Express card. "This isn't a marital spat, Mr. Gibson," she said, her voice crisp and direct. "This is a clean case of civil theft and fraudulent conversion. The pattern is undeniable. The timing, synchronized with your pay deposits, shows clear intent. The memos are her own admission, in a way. She was creating a false paper trail to support a narrative of a loan, while her actions constituted a systematic depletion of a joint asset for a non-marital purpose, the funding of her family's private, separate business." She laid out his options. They could send a private demand letter. They could file a lawsuit and begin the long, slow process of discovery, or they could pursue a more aggressive, immediate strategy. "I want to place a lien on the business," Andre said, his voice firm. The indecision and shock he'd felt that morning had been burned away, leaving behind a core of cold steel. "The store. It was purchased with my money. It is the primary asset." Jessica raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "A UCC lien against the business entity's assets, inventory, fixtures, accounts receivable. It's aggressive. It would cloud their title to everything in that store." "Good," Andre said. "And I want a demand letter drafted immediately," he continued. "I want it to detail every single transfer, with the dates and the amounts. I want it served today, at the grand opening." A slow smile spread across Jessica's face. "That's public." "Very public." "Yes," Andre said. "She made a public spectacle of our finances. She deserves a public accounting." "I like your style, Mr. Gibson," Jessica said. She swiveled in her chair and called to her paralegal in the next room. "David, I need you to draft a demand letter for fraudulent conversion, total of $94,000. And I need you to file a UCC1 financing statement against Vasquez and Company LLC. I need it all done in the next 90 minutes. For the next hour and a half, the office was a hive of activity. Andre provided the LLC information he found on the Florida State Business Registry, with Ricardo Vasquez listed as the registered agent. Jessica's team drafted a devastatingly precise demand letter. It began with a formal demand for the immediate repayment of $94,000. It went on to state that this was not a loan, but a series of unauthorized transfers, and that Andre was reserving all rights to pursue further damages for civil theft, which in Florida could include treble damages. The second page was Exhibit A, a neatly formatted table listing all 14 transfers, the dates, the exact amounts, and the memo line "inventory advance," repeated 14 times. While David, the paralegal, electronically filed the UCC lien with the Secretary of State, Jessica did some digging of her own. With the LLC information, she was able to identify the bank that had provided the primary business loan for the store's build-out and initial operating costs, Ponte Vedra Community Bank. "This is the kill shot," she explained, pointing to a clause in the standard commercial loan agreement she'd pulled up as an example. "Lenders require borrowers to disclose all sources of funding and to affirm that they are not in default on any other obligations. Your $94,000 was presented to the bank as family investment or owner's equity. The fact that it's actually a contested debt and that you're filing a lien puts them in immediate breach of their loan covenants. She had her assistant draft a formal notice to the bank's legal department, attaching a copy of the demand letter and the filed UCC lien. It would be sent via courier Monday morning. The fallout from that would be catastrophic for the Vasquezes, but it would be delayed. Andre wanted immediate impact. "Now, for the delivery," Jessica said, picking up her phone. "I have a process server. He's the best, unflappable. He'll walk through fire to deliver a summons. I'll have him meet you outside the store." "What time is the ribbon cutting?" 5 o'clock, Andre said. "Perfect," Jessica confirmed, speaking into the phone. "Be at the Ponte Vedra Grove Shopping Center at 4:55 p.m. You will be serving Miriam Vasquez and Ricardo Vasquez, yes, during the event. Make sure it's visible." Andre signed the engagement letter and the legal documents, the $5,000 retainer feeling like the best money he had ever spent. He walked out of the glass tower into the late afternoon sun, no longer a victim, but a strategist executing a plan. He was on his way to the grand opening, not as the humiliated husband, but as the primary creditor. Andre arrived back at the Ponte Vedra shopping center at 4:45 p.m. The party was already in full swing. A small crowd of about 50 or 60 people had gathered on the brick promenade in front of Vasquez and Company. They were the Ponte Vedra elite: doctors, lawyers, real estate developers, and their immaculately dressed spouses. A valet service was parking a fleet of expensive cars: Mercedes G-Wagons, Range Rovers, a stray Porsche. The sound of clinking glasses and polite, moneyed laughter drifted on the humid air. This was the moment of his public expulsion. He saw Miriam standing near the door, a queen in her own court. He walked toward her, playing the part of the tardy, apologetic husband. And that's when she delivered the line, the one that severed the last thread of his affection. "This is a Vasquez family moment. You've never been family." He didn't argue. He didn't protest. He simply gave her a slow, deliberate nod, his face an unreadable mask. "I understand," he said, his voice quiet. He stepped back from the entrance, not leaving as she expected, but melting into the edge of the crowd. He found a spot near a tall, distinguished-looking man with silver hair who was talking to a colleague. Andre overheard a snippet of their conversation, a deal involving container shipping and the port of Jacksonville. The man was a partner at a major logistics firm. Andre stood there quietly, an anonymous face in the crowd, and waited. The setting sun was casting long, dramatic shadows across the manicured landscape. The resolution was coming. Inside, Ricardo Vasquez, beaming with pride, stepped up to a small lectern with a microphone. He tapped it once, and the crowd quieted. "Friends, family, esteemed members of the Ponte Vedra community," his voice boomed, full of self-importance. "Thank you for joining us on this historic day. For generations, the Vasquez name has stood for quality, for taste, for an uncompromising commitment to excellence." Andre listened to the speech, feeling a profound and unsettling calm. The words were hollow, meaningless. The entire enterprise was a sham, a beautiful facade built on a foundation of lies. "Today," Ricardo continued, his voice swelling with emotion, "we plant our flag here, in the heart of Ponte Vedra, with the opening of Vasquez & Co. This store is more than a business. It is a testament to family, to vision, and to sacrifice." A few people in the crowd applauded politely. Andre watched Miriam, who stood beside her father, her face glowing with adoration and triumph. She held a giant pair of golden scissors, ready to cut the thick, red satin ribbon that was stretched across the store's entrance. "And none of this," Ricardo said, placing a hand on Miriam's shoulder, "would be possible without the driving force behind this dream, My brilliant and beautiful daughter, Miriam. As the crowd applauded again, Andre checked his watch. 4:59 p.m., right on schedule. A man in a plain, unremarkable gray suit detached himself from the far edge of the parking lot and began walking toward the store. He moved with a quiet purpose, his path direct and unwavering. He was of average height and build, the kind of man you would immediately forget, but he carried a large, stiff manila envelope that seemed to command its own gravity. He navigated the crowd with professional ease, offering quiet "excuse me's" as he made his way to the front. He arrived at the foot of the entrance just as Ricardo was gesturing for Miriam to step forward to the ribbon. The process server didn't hesitate. He stepped directly into the cleared space between the family and the crowd. "Miriam Vasquez?" he asked, his voice calm, clear, and loud enough for everyone in the immediate vicinity to hear. Miriam, annoyed by the interruption at her moment of glory, turned to him. "Yes, what is it?" she snapped. "You've been served," the man said, extending the thick envelope toward her. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Ricardo's smile froze on his face. He stepped forward protectively. "What is the meaning of this? Who are you?" The process server ignored him and looked at Miriam, who was staring at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. When she didn't take it, he simply placed it in the crook of her arm, wedged between her and the golden scissors. He then turned to Ricardo. "Ricardo Vasquez, as registered agent for Vasquez and Company LLC? Yes," Ricardo stammered. The server handed him a second identical envelope. "You've also been served." Having completed his task, the man turned and walked away, disappearing back into the crowd as unobtrusively as he had appeared. For a moment, nobody moved. The scene was frozen. Then, with trembling hands, Miriam tore open the envelope. Her eyes scanned the first page. The legal language was dense, but a few words jumped out. Demand for immediate repayment. Fraudulent conversion. $94,000. Her face went bone white. The vibrant, confident glow she'd had moments before vanished, replaced by a mask of horrified disbelief. She frantically flipped to the next page. Exhibit A, the table, the 14 transfers. Her stomach lurched as she saw them all listed, a perfect, damning ledger of her deceit. Each inventory advance memo was a tiny, typed accusation. The letter went on, stating in cold, legal terms that a UCC lien had been filed against all business assets and inventory, and that their primary lender, Ponte Vedra Community Bank, had been formally notified. Ricardo snatched the documents from her hand. His own face, moments ago flush with pride, turned a mottled shade of red and gray. He read the pages, his jaw dropping open. The whispers in the crowd grew louder, more insistent. People were craning their necks, trying to see what was on the papers. The logistics partner Andre had been standing near was watching the scene unfold with a look of intense, analytical interest. Miriam's wild, panicked eyes scanned the crowd, searching for the source of this nightmare. And then she saw him, Andre, standing quietly at the edge of the celebration, his expression as calm and placid as a frozen lake. He wasn't angry, he wasn't yelling, he was just watching. Their eyes locked across the space of 20 yards, and in that single, silent moment, she understood everything. His quietness that morning hadn't been shock. His easy agreement to meet her there hadn't been acquiescence. It had all been strategy. He had known, and he had let her walk right into this perfectly orchestrated public humiliation. The strength went out of her knees. The giant golden scissors, the symbol of her triumph, slipped from her numb fingers and fell to the pristine Italian marble floor with a loud, discordant clatter that echoed in the sudden, profound silence. The ribbon remained uncut. The store remained unopened. The dream was over. The collapse of the Vasquez empire was not a slow decline. It was a spectacular, high-speed demolition, the consequences cascading one after another with brutal efficiency. The demand letter served at the ribbon cutting was merely the first domino. The immediate aftermath was a flurry of frantic, enraged voicemails left on Andre's phone, which he let go to voicemail one by one. The first was from Miriam, minutes after the process server left. "Andre, what was that? What did you do? Call me right now. This is some kind of sick joke." Her voice was shrill, laced with disbelief. An hour later, a second call. "I'm reading this. This is insane. Those were loans. You said it was okay. How could you do this to me, to my family, at my opening?" Her tone had shifted to righteous indignation. Then came Ricardo. "You listen to me, you ungrateful punk. You will drop this nonsense right now, or I will ruin you. You have no idea who you're messing with." It was all bluster, the empty threats of a man whose power was an illusion. Andre didn't respond. He forwarded the voicemail audio files to Jessica Riley with the subject line, "For the file." He let the legal process he had set in motion do the talking. The judgment, the Vasquezes, on the advice of a cheap lawyer who assured them they could fight it, refused to pay. Jessica Riley immediately filed a lawsuit for civil theft. The evidence was so overwhelming. The 14 documented transfers, the self-incriminating memos, the timing, that the judge granted Andre a summary judgment without a full trial. There was no defense. The court issued a judgment in Andre's favor for the full $94,000, plus his attorney's fees and court costs, bringing the total amount owed to just over $105,000. Miriam's claim that they were loans was dismissed as self-serving and unsubstantiated. The lien and the lender, the UCC lien, initially a preliminary filing, was now perfected by the court's judgment. Andre Gibson was officially the primary secured creditor of Vasquez and Company, LLC. That Monday morning, as promised, the formal notice arrived at Ponte Vedra Community Bank. The bank's legal department reacted with predictable alarm. They had extended a $250,000 line of credit based on financial statements showing a significant owner's equity injection of nearly $100,000. Learning that this equity was, in fact, a contested, fraudulently obtained debt constituted a material breach of the loan covenants. The bank's risk department saw a business that was not only undercapitalized, but founded on an act of fraud. They immediately froze the line of credit and issued a notice of acceleration, calling the entire outstanding balance of the loan due within 30 days. The anchor tenant, the management of the Ponte Vedra Grove Shopping Center, was apoplectic. Their reputation was built on curating a collection of stable, high-end tenants. The public implosion of a new store on its opening day was an unprecedented disaster. Worse, the anchor tenant, a luxury organic grocer named the Gilded Truffle, had a co-tenancy clause in their very expensive lease. The clause stipulated that a certain percentage of the surrounding storefronts must be occupied by financially solvent businesses of a similar caliber. A brand new boutique opening in immediate public default was a clear violation. The grocer's corporate office, not wanting their brand associated with the scandal, swiftly invoked the clause and terminated their lease. The departure of the Gilded Truffle left a gaping hole in the shopping center and sent a shockwave through the local commercial real estate market. Social and financial ruin. The story of the ribbon cutting became the stuff of local legend. It spread like wildfire through the gossip-hungry social circles of Ponte Vedra and San Marco. The Vasquezes were no longer seen as ambitious entrepreneurs. They were grifters, cheaters who had swindled their own son-in-law. Invitations to charity galas dried up. Friends stopped returning their calls. The bank's action and Andre's lien made it impossible to secure any new financing. They tried to sell the store's inventory to raise cash, but Andre's lien meant he was entitled to the proceeds of any sale. No one would touch it. The business was paralyzed. The store, less than 3 months after its disastrous grand opening, Vasquez and Company, was forced into liquidation to satisfy its creditors. The primary creditor was Andre. The beautiful, custom-built mahogany shelving, which had cost $15,000, was sold at auction for $2,000. The stunning $22,000 Italian marble counter was pried from the floor and sold for a paltry $3,500. The entire inventory of designer clothes, handbags, and shoes was liquidated at pennies on the dollar. Piece by piece, the physical manifestation of Andre's stolen savings was dismantled and sold off. The money sent directly to his account until the $105,000 judgment was satisfied in full. The Vasquez family was left with nothing but debt and public shame. Miriam filed for divorce. Andre did not contest it. Do you think the consequences fit the betrayal? Some might say this was cold and calculated, but others would call it justice. Drop a comment below with your thoughts, because what happens next is the part of the story that truly matters. 2 years later. The world of Pontevedra, with its shimmering facades and hollow promises, felt like a distant country Andre had once visited. He was in his own office now, a clean, functional space in a modest office park overlooking the sprawling, industrial beauty of the port of Jacksonville. There was no Italian marble or custom mahogany, just a sturdy $400 desk from IKEA, a comfortable chair, and a large whiteboard covered in logistics routes and shipping schedules. The view from his window wasn't of manicured lawns, but of massive container ships being loaded and unloaded by giant, graceful cranes. To Andre, this was true beauty. It was real. It was productive. He was no longer Andre Gibson, senior manager. He was Andre Gibson, founder and CEO of a Gibson Logistics. After the divorce, he had taken his recovered money and the bonus from the Georgia project and invested it all in himself. He'd started his own third-party logistics 3PL firm, leveraging his expertise and the contacts he had built over a decade in the industry. The firm was lean, efficient, and growing. He was wearing a simple black polo shirt with his company's logo embroidered on the chest and a rugged, practical $150 G-Shock watch. He was happy. It was a quiet, solid happiness, not the fragile, performative kind he had once mistaken for the real thing. His phone rang, buzzing on the desk beside a stack of shipping manifests. The caller ID showed a name that made him pause. Marcus Thorne. Mr. Thorne was the silver-haired man from the ribbon cutting, the partner at the massive logistics conglomerate Apex Global. Andre had met him formally at a Port Authority luncheon a few months ago, and they were in the final stages of negotiating a major contract. Andre, Marcus's voice said, warm and professional, got the final papers from our legal team. Everything looks good. We're ready to sign. Andre felt a surge of quiet triumph. This was the contract that would take his firm to the next level, a multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal to manage all of Apex Global's drayage and warehousing for the entire southeastern United States. That's great news, Marcus. We're ready on our end. You know, Andre, Marcus said, his tone shifting from business to something more personal. I've been meaning to tell you, I was at that event in Pontevedra 2 years ago. Andre's hand tightened on his phone. I remember. I saw the whole thing, Marcus continued. The way they treated you and the way you handled it. No shouting, no drama, just quiet, decisive action. You didn't just get your money back. You exposed a flawed foundation. That day, I told my partners, that's the kind of man I want to be in business with. Integrity, quiet strength, a man who understands that a solid structure is everything. Andre was speechless for a moment. He had never considered that his most painful moment could also be his most powerful professional reference. The world is full of people who build pretty storefronts on rotten ground, Marcus said. We look for people who build on bedrock. The contract is on its way over. Congratulations, Andre. You've earned it. After the call ended, Andre swiveled his chair to face the window. He watched a massive container ship, laden with goods from around the world, being guided into its berth. He thought of Miriam's words, the ones that had once felt like a knife in his heart. This is a Vasquez family moment. You've never been family. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. She was right. He never was. They saw him as a tool, a stepping stone, a name to be kept off the marquee. They had built a business on his back and then tried to discard him at the door. He was never family. He picked up the pen on his desk and looked at the signature line on a preliminary copy of the contract. His name was there clear as day, Andre Gibson. Not as a footnote, not as a silent partner, but as the principal. His name was on the contract that would secure his own legacy, a legacy built not on marble and lies, but on integrity and the quiet, unstoppable power of a job well done. And in the end, that is the only name that truly matters. True wealth isn't the brand you wear or the car you drive. It's the foundation you build your life on. It's the quiet integrity that earns you a seat at the tables that matter, long after the flashy storefronts have been boarded up and forgotten. Thank you for joining us on this journey with Andre. If his story of quiet strength and earned success resonated with you, please consider subscribing to Love Beyond Pride for more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding true worth. What did you think of Marcus Thorne's reason for giving Andre the contract? Let us know in the comments below. We believe in the power of community and sharing our experiences.